Greetings, friends. At the moment, in the world of cars, there is a situation where almost every car model of any manufacturer has both reliable and unreliable equipment of a separate model. And segment TS in this regard was no exception. So, there is almost no model left that can be said that all motors and gearboxes are durable. Every self-respecting brand has an engine or gearbox that is sure to become a headache for a resale buyer. Therefore, I decided to collect the most reliable modifications of 10-year-old representatives of the segment, which you can safely buy used and not worry about your finances. The first to consider is a bright representative of just such a car, the Skoda Octavia A5 with a 1.6 MPI engine. This motor is very affordable in terms of service prices. A taxi driver's dream engine. In fact, this is the most reliable Octavia motor, and the rest are far from it. With normal maintenance and regular oil changes, it will travel 500,000 kilometers and even more without problems. Another big plus of the A5 with this engine is that you can also take a reliable Eisen car with it, and not the infamous DSG. In general, this is the most successful power unit for this model. But we can also recommend 1.9 TDI with a clear conscience. Things are a little worse with 1.6 TDI, but it is also good. The Octavia itself, no matter what engine it comes with, is one of the most spacious and practical models of the C segment. Her reputation was spoiled by problems with TSI and the same DSG, but let's not talk about the bad. Let's move on to the next reliable and durable representative of the 10th generation Toyota King class in the back of the E150. Here, unlike the Octavia, it will be easier to say what should be avoided, and this is the robotic checkpoint. Jerks and shocks when switching, spontaneous transition to neutral gear, overheating of the friction linings of the clutch. This is an incomplete list of breakdowns that haunt an extremely unsuccessful unit. It is not surprising that during the restyling the box was changed to a regular automatic. Another weak point is the steering column. Over time, the crosspiece and steering shaft gear play. The rest of the car is one of the most reliable in the class. All three Corolla engines are simple aspirated with distributed injection. There is nothing to say about a manual box and a hydromechanical machine. Both units are devoid of any obvious design flaws. The same applies to the chassis, body, and electrics. In general, almost the standard of reliability and durability. If the previous participants are quite frequent guests in such tops, then the Chevrolet Volt is something new. The European analog of the first-generation Volt is the Opel Ampera, which, in addition to appearance and price, is actually no different. It's a hybrid, but not a regular one. There are three engines. The first is a simple gasoline 1.4-liter internal combustion engine. The second is a motor generator, and the third is an electric motor connected to the driving front wheels. Despite such a complex design, it all works and rarely causes any problems. It turns out that when you have as many as 3 engines, then the load is distributed accordingly. As a result, we get a minimum load on the internal combustion engine, which is not even directly connected to the wheels. Accordingly, the oil with a filter in it can be changed every 30,000 kilometers. It stands here as a generator that generates electricity. Mileage on a full battery charge is from 40 to 80 kilometers. It all depends on the season, driving style, terrain, and the number of additional consumers included. On average, you can count on 50 to 60 kilometers firmly, but in severe frosts you are unlikely to drive more than 40 kilometers. The battery does not show signs of noticeable degradation as it is equipped with a liquid heating and cooling system to keep the temperature within a certain range. By the way, it charges from a home network or a 220V socket in 4 to 4.5 hours. As for the chassis, in fact it is an ordinary car created on the Chevrolet Cruze platform. In general, it is very reliable, and there are confirmations of this from taxi drivers who roll on it for more than 500,000 kilometers without any problems. In addition, many of these machines are also equipped with gas. Volt is deprived of the problem of classic electric vehicles, and this is a strict limitation on the range of travel from charging to charging. You can just fill up the gas and go wherever you want. Well, getting around the city is almost free. Such a car is simply impossible not to recommend for purchase. Since we have already talked about the Chevrolet Cruze platform, let's take a look at it. Cruze is something like a Korean Opel. The car came out practical, budget and reliable. The only thing you can find fault with is the automatic transmission of GM's own design. Overheating, a small resource of mechanics, a capricious valve body, it's all about her. The first problems can begin at runs of about 50,000 kilometers. The mechanics have no serious problems with the resource. Everything is good with the motors here too. Old, proven over the years and Opel units. Moreover, this applies not only to atmospherics. 1.4 supercharged and diesel also do not cause any significant complaints. They just need a little more care. The suspension is structurally simple, and the Cruze body, like all the latest generations of GM cars, has good corrosion resistance. Nothing more to say here, great car for the money. A prominent representative of the C segment is the second-generation Volvo S40. The car looks especially bright with petrol turbo engines of 2.4 and 2.5 liters, which are the pride of the Swedish manufacturer. Such units show good dynamics even on the heavy XC90. What can we say about the compact S40? Naturally, they are reliable, but they will definitely require more investment than simple aspirated from Ford. It is worth noting that this model did not receive unreliable engines. No problem with boxes. The mechanics are very reliable, and the automatic machine is not exactly over-resourceful, but it doesn't have any special sores. The body is very well painted and also made of galvanized metal. From below it is protected by a thick layer of mastic and many plastic elements. As for the chassis, since the S40 is based on the Ford Focus 2 platform, the weaknesses are the same. Well, spare parts are not a problem. By the way, the station wagon goes under the designation V50. Since the Ford Focus was mentioned, it should be recognized that it deserves to be on this list. Focus 2 does not have any problems with engines, chassis, electrics, and the bodywork here is at a high level. The only cant is the mechanics for low-power 1.4 and 1.6, in which synchronizers and the input shaft bearing often fail. But the automatic and mechanics for 1.8 and 2.0 are reliable and very durable. In general, the car is very reliable and unpretentious in maintenance. Problematic cars, of course, are found, but only if the owners exploited them in a hard mode. Kia Ceed of the first generation with the designation ED. This is a reliable car, although sometimes problems arise with it. In particular, the suspension is not the strongest side of the Ceed. And the durability of the interior leaves much to be desired. But in terms of power units, you can safely take any of you that are of interest. Extremely reliable petrol and diesel engines made a living legend out of Ceed. I think such a list simply cannot do without Mercedes. A-Class in the back of the W169 is a strong and durable car. Any of the three gasoline units will please you with quality and endurance. The transmission will not disappoint, even the CVT turned out to be very reliable. Many complaints were only on the quality of the body. A-Class at a very early age pleased with corrosion on the bottoms of the doors due to poor tightness of the welds. But that's all before 2006. In general, this is a great option for segment TS, for those who appreciate German quality cars. Nissan Tiida is another strong representative of the class. Gasoline engines show themselves only on the positive side and do not cause problems. Paired with engines, a 5-speed manual gearbox was installed, and with a 1.6-liter engine, a 4-speed automatic. Both boxes are very reliable. The Jatco automatic transmission is simply the benchmark for reliability. Body iron Nissan Tiida is not prone to corrosion. Unless the suspension is a little behind in reliability from the rest of the nodes. Although it does not have any pronounced shortcomings. What else do you need for an unpretentious car for every day? Golf of the 6th generation can also be included in this list, but VAG, by the way, always has a lot of buts. It is better to avoid the extremely unsuccessful DSGs. They were still very raw and caused a lot of problems, many of which have already been solved. But still, Golf 6 on the machine is not a predictable thing. The mechanics look very decent in this regard. The same thing, however, is also present in the line of power units. Second-hand TSI is a very bad idea. The most reliable is a simple aspirated 1.6, you can also consider 1.4, but it is weaker, and its design is more complicated. Well, diesel engines also run pretty well, having in their category only typical malfunctions for this type of fuel. Otherwise, this is a high-quality German car, which has many times better interior wear resistance than the same Koreans. The next reliable car of the C segment is the second-generation Mazda 3 with the designation BL. All motors are very resourceful and long-lived. in the best traditions of the brand. Same story with gearboxes. Both the automatic machine and the mechanics are practically devoid of children's sores. When creating the second generation of the car, troubles with the body were clearly taken into account, and the result of the changes is positive. If the car has not been in a serious accident, then you are unlikely to find obvious traces of corrosion. Although it is difficult to call it ideal in this regard. The interior for a car of this class is very good, but the wear of the steering wheel, gearshift lever lining and door panels is very fast, and already by 100,000 kilometers the ordinary owner has these parts in a deplorable state. It is not surprising that the alteration of the steering wheel, handles and armrest, aquaprint or film on plastic interior panels is a very popular direction in car styling. Another representative from Toyota was the first generation Auris. Although Toyota Auris cannot boast of the impeccability of the Corolla, the Japanese hatchback is a fairly reliable car. Among the engines, we can safely recommend all gasoline and the smallest diesel 1.4-liter D4D, which is one of the best heavy fuel engines. As for the gearboxes, here, like the Germans, the multimode automated gearbox should be avoided. The second-generation Kia Cerato has very resourceful engines in its range. But with the boxes here is not quite a standard situation, because the 4-speed automatic transmission turned out to be more reliable than the mechanics. The only exception is the 6-speed automatic transmission, because then it was still quite fresh and had a lot of childhood illnesses. Otherwise, it is a very strong representative of the class. Well, the last hero of this issue is the Nissan Leaf electric train. It has long been possible to meet specimens over 500,000 kilometers, and everything is in order with the engines. Some wearers consider the reducer to be the weak point of the bodice. After all, there is simply no familiar gearbox here, its function is performed by a conventional single-stage gearbox. Unlike an electric motor, the gearbox requires maintenance, the lubricant in it must be changed. If you often start abruptly and do not regret it all, then after 30,000 kilometers you can notice metal chips on the drain plug with a magnet. But if you ride in a gentle mode, then there should be no problems with it. In general, with an active driving style, it is advisable to change the oil every 20 to 30,000, in the usual 50 to 60,000 will be enough. A complete replacement requires about 1.4 liters of oil. Well, the biggest disadvantage of the Leaf is the lack of a battery cooling system. What causes it to degrade? On average, a battery loses 10% capacity in the first few years of use. But as such, a complete failure of the battery does not happen. It just gets smaller every year. On the other hand, we can safely say that now this is no longer a problem in view of the large number of used batteries. For a more detailed review of the shortcomings, see my channel at the link in the description. Otherwise, this is a great budget option to switch to electric traction. Well, it will be very interesting to know if you agree with this list, and that's all for me. Thank you very much for your attention. I will be very grateful if you subscribe to the channel. See you soon.